Michael, thank you so much for your time. Let's jump straight in. Great Place to Work has spent decades researching, certifying what makes a great place to work. What makes a great place to work in the era of AI?
In the era of AI, I think a great place to work is one where people are doing work and they're excited and looking forward to the future, a future with AI. And so they feel like AI is going to help them do more and actually lead a better life. That's a great place to work in the era, on the dawn of the AI era. And so they feel like AI is going to help them do more, become more valuable, have more great options and choices in their life, be able to grow for themselves and families, however they might define that, and that they're just going to become more valuable and useful over time. They're going to grow, and the firm that they're with or the firms that they're with are going to grow as well. So it's really a growth mindset, something that makes things better for them and for others at the same time.
And so how is this different? I mean, do you feel like the nature of work is changing dramatically and the quality of leadership, or are we just taking everything that Great Place to Work has learned and just moving it into a new space, a new time?
I think how it's different is that AI has, people have, at least two reactions to AI. And at the extreme ends, there's a lot of hope. And that people are very optimistic about all the things that are going to happen. And then at the other end, there's a lot of fear. And so the world that we're living in, we're working with people and maybe even personally experiencing ourselves. I know I sometimes do some of both of those things. So normally you have a fear of my performance and how others are judging my performance, the performance review. You have a fear on economics. Am I making enough to take care of myself and my family? You have a fear of, is this job going to be here for a while? And am I going to be able to grow and progress? And is our firm or organization doing well? So I'll call that the business fears. Now there's a new one, which is the AI fear or the AI opportunity. That's quite different. So trust, which we've measured for a long time, means more now than it's ever meant, because if you trust the organization and the people that you work with, you have less fear. And then that makes it so that this is kind of a business transformation that maybe you've experienced before.
Yeah. Let's talk about trust. So trust is sort of the foundation of your belief in what makes a high-performing organization a great place to work. You have built a trust index, and it's sort of really everything pivots around this notion of trust. When you look at various surveys right now in companies about do your employees trust your company's strategy, the trust tends to be quite low, and often much, much lower than the trust of the leaders. Why do you think that is?
I think that as you move around the world, you see different statistics, but overall, trust is lower right now because of AI. So that people are fearing that bad things are going to happen to them, mainly because they aren't getting access to AI tools. They aren't getting trained. Some of their leaders aren't really working and getting proficient of it. So it seems like there's a whole lot of talk about something, yet nobody's really preparing you or even getting prepared themselves for this transition. So the fear level is high on a global basis. As you look around the world, it's higher in some countries than others, but overall, the fear level is high. And when you're high in the organization, like an executive, you have less fear than somebody who's perhaps on the front line, where you're kind of away from the decision making. The fear level is higher, and none of this is good. None of this is good. It affects teams and how they work. It affects people. It affects their mental health, their emotional well-being, their financial well-being, because things are feeling less certain. And we've got a world that's full of a lot of uncertainty and fear. So this is a really bad time to be transforming with AI. But yet this is the time that we're sitting in. And so resistance comes with fear. There's a one-to-one correlation between fear and resistance. And yet this is a time when we need people to adopt new technologies. So this is not a great time for AI based on the realities and things that are going on in the world.
So how would you advise a leader that comes to you and say, Michael, we have these really aggressive plans with AI and I just can't get our people on board. They are just not excited about this. They're fearful. They're stuck in the past. Help me. What should I do?
I would acknowledge the fear and I would try and understand the fear. I would not say you shouldn't have fear. And if you have fear, you're not going to do well. Those things don't work. Maybe in the movies, but in real life, they absolutely don't work. People want to know that you are empathetic, you're interested, and you don't want to talk them out of their fear. You want to understand it so that you can give them data and facts to let them know that you understand them and maybe you have some fear in common, and then you can develop ways to work together to really build trust together. And so that's the important work. And it requires a leader to connect with a person, perhaps in a way that they haven't connected before. That the mandate, the work plan, the roadmap, all those things are really, really, the customer, really, really important. But this connection is more important now than ever. And we know people want to grow. And so you want to try and help them feel like this is a great place for them to grow. And then you want to be transparent in your communication. So, for example, if you say, there's going to be no jobs lost when we implement AI. Everybody knows that's not true because there's job loss without AI. So job loss, those things happen in business. So don't make lofty comments, but try and stay in the real world and be transparent. And then if somebody says, hey, do you think I might lose my job due to AI? I would say it's possible, but that's not what we want to happen. It's possible. If our business grows and we meet our financial targets and you're a good performer, you'll be here. You will be here. This is what I believe we should believe. I believe this is what we want, and we should be able to communicate to people. If you're in a situation where you really don't know, then just say that. So I think about the world right now, Carsten, as a world where there's hope and there's fear. Mm-hmm. And in the middle is the truth, which is I don't know. And this is uncomfortable for everybody. It's certainly leaders who are supposed to know, or they think they're supposed to know. But I think human leaders can become more human by saying, hey, I really don't know, but this is what I hope. I hope that this is great for you and that you'll grow and learn. And hey, maybe if it happens and you lose your job, you're going to be a highly desired employee at the next place because of what you've learned here.
Who does this well? I know you talk a lot with Fortune 500 companies and leaders. Maybe you could give some examples that have stuck with you around it. That's really interesting, or that's the right way to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got more examples of the wrong way to go. But I have far more examples, because I think the old way of leading is working against us right now. Mm-hmm. This burn the ships, we're going forward, type of mentality is just not working right now. But some companies that I know are doing this well are talking from the top of the company and moving all the way through the company about the fear and the realities and all that we don't know and understand. Anybody who can talk about 3 years from now and say that they really understand what's going to happen is a salesperson, like a Jensen Huang. Okay, a great salesperson, phenomenal salesperson, but there's no way he knows because 3 years ago, his projections and what has actually happened, are quite different. And so, but some reason we like certainty from leaders. And I think the leaders who are doing this well are being less certain, and they are talking in stories to people. If your early career, let's say you've been at work 5 years, you came through COVID, which meant that was a very unusual way of working. You're the first people in the history of the world to start your career sitting on the edge of your bed, looking in a screen and doing that for a matter of years, very, very isolated. And then you're moving into the office, 1, 2, 3 days a week, for some 5 days a week. That's very strange. As a matter of fact, kind of uncomfortable and less flexible. You kind of like the other way, even though that was hard. You're trying something new. So you've gone through one major transition into another major transition, and here comes AI. So as an early career person, there's no books to refer people like that to. The only thing that helps them is talking to people who can say, I didn't go through what you went through, but let me tell you, things weren't super easy in 2008. Things weren't super easy, in 2012. Things weren't super easy, at other points in time. And so storytelling, to let someone know that you had times in your career early where there was a lot of uncertainty. There was war, there was recession, there was inflation, there was a financial collapse, there was .com, all these things that really created a lot of uncertainty. And how did you make it through? How did you make it through? Storytelling is the most effective way. It is the best practice because it's personal. It's one to another, with no rose-colored glasses, but just talking about the reality of the fact that there are a lot of working people who have been through some very uncertain times, and as a young person, what they would like to know is, number one, how did you get through it? And number two, what can they learn from that? And number three, do you believe they can get through it? Inspiration, really, really important. So it's kind of listening, speaking in a way, being transparent, being inspiring, and also acknowledging people. We live in a world where thank you is rarely said in a sincere way. It's rarely said in a sincere way. So the best practices are listening, speaking, inspiring, and thanking people.
What are some other leadership behaviors that you've seen that build and maintain trust that seem particularly relevant now for the AI?
I think listening. I think not assuming that you know what's going on for the person, but having a conversation. Great listeners ask a lot of questions. So I would underline that. That is number one. You don't know everything. Your life's experience, if you overlay that on another person, you're going to get it wrong. Trust me as a parent. People are different. And so what you've experienced is useful in some way, but their life is going to be completely different than yours, period. And so it's listening, asking questions, trying to understand what the person might be struggling with and what information they're seeking, and how you can help. And not saying you can necessarily help, but your intention is to try and help. So it starts there. And if you do a good job of that, which great listeners ask a lot of questions and take notes, then maybe there's something that the person is asking you about or would like to know, and you don't have the answer. Well, you can say, look, I got it. I'm not really sure whether we can adjust your work schedule that will help you with the personal situation that you have, but I'm going to do what I can and get back to you. And then you actually get back to them and tell them what you can and can't do. Listening requires action. It's not just sitting, taking the information in. It's getting the information and using that information to try and make things better for that person. This is it. This is the power behavior. With that behavior, you can do a lot of things. You can develop a person. You can show a person that you care. You can inspire a person. You can teach a person. You can give them caring, compassionate feedback because you've built up the currency to do that. So listening is far, far away. If you're not a great listener, you are not going to be a great leader. It is absolutely not. You might be a great teacher of technical talent and skill. You might be able to make someone a better project manager using skills. But if there are people involved, you're just not going to be a great leader, and you're not going to be able to develop other great leaders. So it's far and away listening in an active way.
How do you think about kind of this workforce transformation? I mean, we certainly see a lot of very shallow engagement with AI enablement, sort of like high-level training. Hey, take a Claude course, or we think simply about automating the same process all over again. But the more powerful thing will likely come from completely transforming how work is done. Have you seen anything there that inspired you?
What I've seen, like, you mentioned a couple of these. One of them is general training. And what seems to inspire people is where they can see a link between the usage of an AI tool or AI technology that helps them do their job. Two very, very different things. So general training is better than nothing by far, but training that can help a person do more and do better gives them a feeling of growth all on its own. People like that. And everybody doesn't say, oh, I can do this faster. Now I can play more golf. That's what some people do. That's not what a lot of people do. A lot of people are like, wow, this is great. I can add more value to the firm. And, so golf's important, but it's not about trying to necessarily do more of that. Everybody wants to grow, and they know the way to grow is to add more value. So it's certainly the best practices are where you're training somebody in a way that helps them do more, do better, and efficiency, effectiveness, performance, productivity. So those things help. It also builds self-esteem. It helps people feel like they are actually getting better. They have a stronger sense of self. And I think in a world where jobs are going to change in a rapid way, that's important. So, because the idea of, if you talk to young people today, I'd say early career, kind of less than 5 years in the workforce, they don't see themselves working at that employer a long time. That's just generically true. They've had a little too much chaos to have that expectation. So you don't have to try and talk them into that or tell them why it might not happen. They kind of get that part already. And so the work of a leader is to help a person have a great experience. Low fear is part of having a great experience. And then your job as a leader is to create an environment where they want to stay at your firm rather than another firm.
Let's talk a little bit more from the employee perspective. We have this interesting situation that there's this enormous enthusiasm and adoption of AI in people's personal lives, where people may put very, very personal, sensitive information into ChatGPT about mental health, or they're up all night building solutions with Claude, but then they're very hesitant of using it at work. How do you explain that difference between this technology excites me in my personal life, but I'm wary about using it at work?
Yeah, there's people trust the technology more than they trust their employer. That's not great. If you think about it, it's not great at all. First of all, should they trust the technology that much? But people do. So this is a fact. This is a Gen Z fact that we were talking about, that generation puts everything into AI tools and seeks dating advice and career advice from AI tools. So, and trust that advice more than their people leader. So, I get it, but I wouldn't recommend it. But it also says a lot that they will trust that more than their employer, more than their people leader. So this trust thing is real. Low trust with an employer, low trust with a people leader will lead people to do things they probably shouldn't do, like trust technology with their dating decisions, or their career decisions, or whether to have a child or not. I don't know if I'd ask a chatbot whether I should have a child or not, but people are doing that. So sad state of the world, I would say, but that is the world that we live in. So I think, what employers want to do is not that you're going to ask your employer whether you should have a child or not, but what employers want is that people are willing to take that kind of a leap into technology into the work world and to be more open at work. But it all comes from trust. If we've got some weird things that are going on in the world right now, in the business we're in, for example, where now with AI, people can take our survey results and along with what somebody typed into a Slack channel, along with their email, and actually know a lot about who is saying what in the firm. And this fear is increasing around the world. And so just because employers, can do something doesn't mean they should do it. So we have to be very careful here at piercing the personal veil and making sure that we are able to take care of the person. The more that occurs, the less true adoption we're going to have, because people are going to be afraid of the technology rather than trusting it.
And that's interesting. Let's talk about that a bit more. So you are kind of in the business of listening and making sense of employee sentiments. I mean, how do you see that world changing?
It's like we're dealing with things now that we've never dealt with before. That because people are able to triangulate survey data with Slack and Teams and email and other social media posts, you can actually see something in one of those channels where maybe an employee says something expressing some violence. And all of a sudden bells go off. Now that could have been a person just on a bad day with a social media rant. That can cost you your career now. It can absolutely do that. And so you have to be careful and thoughtful as an individual. And I would also caution employers about having agents decide when somebody's a risk rather than a person. So, I've said things on a bad day that, probably could get me unemployed. So people have a way of doing that, and it doesn't mean they're going to act out on it. So, we have to be careful and not kind of overreact. We just had a case where somebody used ChatGPT to ask a question about a company. ChatGPT responded that this company was focused on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The government just shut down all funding. Totally agentic decision making, which is crazy, but it actually happened. It happened yesterday. This is a time where mistakes are going to be made, and some of them are costly. And again, whether you should trust the government right now, I'm in the U.S. I can think of reasons why you shouldn't, but that's a personal view. But I certainly want to trust my employer. And right now around the world, the Edelman data is clear that people trust their employer more than they trust their government, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Because it's just because the scores of trust for employers is not super great. It's just higher than government, which is a pretty low bar.
You started the conversation by talking about kind of growth, right? The goal, the purpose of a great place to work to enable that kind of professional growth, grow as a human. What's your advice to someone who's maybe early in their career, mid in their career, and they're kind of wary about this AI thing? That they want me to participate. Am I just going to kill my job? What's the right way for them to think about their growth in the context of AI?
Yeah, I think that if my suggestion for them would be that they own their career, not their employer. They personally own their career. And I don't care what the employer says. You own your career. And you're likely to work at 5 to 7 places, at least in your career. I would have that expectation. And therefore, there's going to be movement. There's going to be lots of different experiences. And what you want to be is able in a lot of ways to be attractive to many different experiences and many different employers. So when I had the opportunity, to get AI training, take it, jump in with both feet. Not necessarily because you want to do great things at that company, but because you want to do great things in your life and your career. So even if you're hesitant, I would jump in. Don't think about, well, I'm afraid to do it here. You're not going to be there for long, generally speaking. I would get involved. You don't learn, and try not to use it for dating, but for having more impact and being able to do more and being able to do better as the goal, and being AI first mindset, meaning that when there's a problem, you're thinking about how AI tools can help. That's going to make you very, very attractive. It's happening today. Large employers of early career people, like places like Accenture, have hired over 80,000 people, in the last 12 months, all early career people who they view as being AI first. So I don't care if you're working at a bakery, if you're working at a production plant, a manufacturing place, thinking about how AI can be used to add more value in your role. That's the place to be, and that's the mindset that I would recommend to you. That technical ability plus your own perseverance and grit are the makings of you having a career that'll have growth.
Great advice. So just to conclude, what might be one thing that you think people aren't thinking enough about or talking enough about when it comes to AI? What do you wish would be thinking about?
This morning, I went through like 6 or 7 different CEO interviews, kind of looking at videos of them, because I'm going to be doing some CEO interviews shortly. And I was struck by none of them talking about their people. So I was struck by that. I was like, really? So I think at least point number 3 ought to be your people. Okay, I get market opportunity, market expansion, but maybe at least number 3. I would start with it number 1 because you're not going to get anywhere without them. So it's that. We're not going to get anywhere on this one without the people coming along and having a low point of fear. So I would focus on the people. And if I'm early career, I want to work in a place where I get exposure to tech tools. And I want to work at a place where I have a leader who wants me to grow. And if I have to choose between the two, I would choose the place where I had a leader that wants me to grow. Maybe I don't have Claude, but I got a leader who wants me to grow. I'll take a leader who wants me to grow and Copilot over Claude and a leader who doesn't want me to grow. So that would be my advice to a person.
Very good.
I wasn't trying to knock Microsoft, but I'm just trying to use it to make a point.
Thank you so much, Michael.